why do I like kettlebells? Well, I think the first thing is that they're so versatile. All right, you can use them for lots of different things. Now, I've heard them described as a Swiss Army knife of training tools. And also, I enjoy it. It's fun, all right, because of the variety. I think that is, and it gives you functional strength as well, which is what I'm all about. Okay, on the downside then, well, it's maybe not the best tool to use for training at the extremes of disciplines. So I'm thinking if you want to be a bodybuilder and build massive muscles, if you want to be a strong man or a power lifter, then ultimately the training, the kettlebell is a training tool, and it's maybe not the best tool for the job. If you wanted to do those types of things, then maybe you're looking at buying a barbell with lots of heavy weights and dumbbells. However, I'm not into that. I'm into longevity. I'm into functional strength, and most of my training is GPP, which is general physical preparedness, and it's just general training. I train to be all round fit. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to bike, swim, hike. So I want strength to be able to do those things. I want to be able to run around after my kids. I want to be able to pick my kids up. So, that's the kind of the all-round everyday strength that I need. And I find the kettlebell is great for that. Plus, they don't take up much room. In fact, I've got one right here in the corner of my kitchen. Okay. So they don't take up much room. Now, it might be that you're thinking of getting a kettlebell. That's why you've tuned in. Or you might have one in the shed, gathering dust. And I wonder how many kettlebells there are. Thousands of kettlebells all around the country, propping doors open, in the corners of garages, rusting away, gathering cobwebs, bought during COVID and then discarded. So have a look around, see if you've got one. You might have bought one. And, this is for you guys. It's an introduction to using kettlebells. Now, the first thing that I'm asked is, what weight should I get? If you're thinking of getting a kettlebell. Now, of course, this is a big it depends question, which most questions are it depends when it comes to health and fitness. However, I'll try and give you a definitive answer. It depends on your training age, how long you've been training. It depends on your conditioning. How conditioned are you? Are you are you fit? Are you actually not very fit? Are you very deconditioned? Have you got any injuries? And what are your goals as well? Remember what I mentioned earlier about the bodybuilding and things like that. So you need to consider all those things. And to put a number on it, well, my own journey, I lost a load of weight through cycling. I was cycling to work, I was cycling at the weekends, cycling every day, and I lost a ton of weight. However, I didn't really gain any strength through it. I just lost weight and I become that kind of skinny, fatter, smaller version of my fatter self, if you like. So I wanted to build some muscle and a bit of strength to go with my cycling, so I could get better at it, and I wanted to take up running as well. So I was very deconditioned. I must have been, it was over 10 years ago, so I must have been early 40s. I was very deconditioned, I'm ashamed to say. I could hardly press anything overhead. So I actually started with an 8-kilogram kettlebell. And I bought myself a DVD and put that on. It had all the moves on there. I learnt all the moves. And they had a couple of workouts on there. I followed along the workouts. And, I soon progressed on in weights and up to a 12 kg kettlebell. And then I bought a 16, then a 20. If you notice, I'm going up there in 4 kg increments. That's generally what kettlebells do. Some companies have now started to go in 2 kg increments, but keeping cost-wise, I prefer to stick in 4 kg increments. So 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and it goes on onwards and upwards. So if you are a male, kind of in fairly reasonable shape, not too deconditioned, then a 12 kg bell will be a good starting point. I was particularly unconditioned, so 8 was fine for me. But I would say for most people to get an 8, 12, sorry. If you're a woman, similar thing, if you're deconditioned, think about getting an 8 or even a 4 or a 6 and working up from there. Okay, you can always add another kettlebell once you've learned the moves. Which brings me on to my next point, really. That's your first job. Some of the moves with a kettlebell, some of the exercises are quite technical. So you can get two different types of exercises with the kettlebell. You get the static ones, which are the grind style, push them out exercises such as the squat, the deadlift, the press, and rows, that kind of thing. So where you're lifting and pushing the kettlebell overhead. And then you've got your more dynamic ballistic exercises where you're moving the kettlebell around, you're swinging it around, and it's going here, there, and everywhere. It's going above your head, out in front, around the back of your neck, and all the rest of the stuff. So two different, very distinctive types of exercise and movements, again, which is why I like the kettlebell so much, for that reason. So learning the basics first, the static exercises. So you've got your goblet squat where you're holding it in front of you and you're squatting down. You can learn the deadlift, which is a hip hinge movement. So you're hinging at the hips. You can learn pressing movements, overhead press. So all those movements you can dial in with your first kettlebell that you get. And then you can think about moving on to the more dynamic and ballistic exercises, because that's really where you've got a possibility of injuring yourself if you're swinging the kettlebell around and it's too heavy and you're not contracting the right muscles, you're not engaging the right muscles, you could end up hurting your back or your knee or something like that. So learning the deadlift, the squat first with proper form, that's the way to go first. Overhead press, and then I think this kettlebell swing is going to give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak, as a kettlebell exercise. Now, I've made a couple of videos actually on kettlebells. So there's one on what weight to get, and I'll put a link to that one in the description. The other one is on the kettlebell swing, how to do the kettlebell swing. So there's a certain few exercises you can go through which kind of builds you up to doing the swing. And like I say, it is a hip hinge motion. So you're hinging at the hips, you're bending at the hips, you're feeling it in your hamstrings. It is a great posterior chain exercise. If you've got quite a weak posterior chain, which I'm talking your glutes, your bum muscles and your hamstrings, lower back, so all that, your lats at your back muscles, your upper back muscles. If you're particularly weak in that area, then you're not necessarily going to engage those muscles properly, and this is where you can injure the lower back muscles, which are really small muscles at the lower back. So learn how to squeeze the glutes and engage the hamstrings at the back, which are really strong muscles. And you do that by learning the deadlift motion, that they're hinging at the hips. So learning the swing. Then you've got the clean, which is where you're picking the kettlebell up from the floor and you're putting it into the rack position. So the rack position is where you have it up on your chest and it's kind of like sat right on your chest and your elbows tucked in. And from that motion, you can then push up to do an overhead press. So the clean and then the clean and press. And the clean and press is a great exercise to do. Once you've learned those, you can start to put those together attach a few moves together, which we call complexes, kettlebell complexes. And the best way of doing those, I think, is for time. So you can do set the timer for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, and do swings, so many swings, 10 swings, then you'll do 10 cleans, 10 presses, and then you can link them together and do a clean, press, and squat. So I'll put all this together. I'll put a description to these particular movements so you can see it on a video if you want to have a look at that. So putting them together as a complex is a really effective way of training your whole body. Okay, so a couple of safety points next before we continue on our journey. When you're learning a ballistic movement like the swing, then make sure your surrounding area is safe. So what I mean by that, you don't want to be swinging in front of other people in case you let go of the bell. I wouldn't recommend maybe swinging in front of the telly in case you let it go in and it hits the telly. Always respect the kettlebell weight. Okay, so we don't want to be, trying to fling it up and into a rack position and then dropping it on our foot, and certainly, trying too heavy to press overhead and then accidentally dropping the kettlebell either on your foot or on your head, which wouldn't be the best thing. So always be respectful of the weight. Be respectful of your surrounding areas. Give yourself enough space. I love training outside for that reason in the garden. So you can consider that. And also, if you've got niggling injuries, just be careful to train around those and not to make things worse. Because as a ballistic exercise, doing the swing or the snatch or something like that, you could really end up injuring yourself if you've already got a long-standing injury. So check out any injuries before you get started. To recap then, so if you're a guy, if you're a bloke, consider a 12 kg kettlebell as a good starting point, bearing in mind all the other things that we've said around training age and all the variables that could go into that. So 12 kg, 4, 6, 8 kg for women. If you're fairly strong, you can start with a 12 or a 16. It really does depend on where you're at, but 6 or 8 would be a good starting point for most women. Once you've done that, once you've got your kettlebell, remember to respect the weight. Learn the basic moves first: the deadlift, the squat, the goblet squat, the overhead press, and the bent over row. They're going to give you some really good value with the kettlebell. Once you've nailed those movements and you've started to feel the muscles that you're kind of using during those movements, then you can move on to the more ballistic, the more movement type exercises. I'd start with the swing, then the clean and press together, and then you can have any number of fun from there with lunges, with halos. Look all these up. There's some great exercises. The kettlebell snatch is great for cardiovascular health. However, it's a more advanced technique, so I wouldn't tackle that one until you've got a really good clean and press. Okay. Right, folks, that's about it for this week's episode. I hope I have whetted your appetite for kettlebells. Please go and watch the videos. There's some great info on there, and get yourself going. If you've got any questions, please get in touch, davidshieldspt@gmail.com. I can give you some information around kettlebell training and where to go. If you want to send me a video of your technique, you can. I'll have a look at it. And I'll see you around. See you in the Facebook group, guys. All right, bye for now.